Your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.
Hey, good evening, horror fans. Happy New Year, and welcome to the Weekly Horoscope. I'm your host, Jerry, here with my partner, Matt. And Matt, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And we start the year off with one of the core fundamentals of horror, particularly from a religious standpoint and the good versus evil. Our topic this week is going to be Satanic Panic. And it's a pretty cool one. It's like I say, it's got kind of underpinnings in the very origins of horror with the good and evil kind of nature, and it's a pretty cool topic. What do you think of this?
Yeah, I agree. The concept of Satan is like kind of like the embodiment of all evil for mankind, and so our oldest stories go back to some kind of like Satan, or Satan's in Egyptian mythology it was Seth, right? And then Seth later becomes Satan, and we see these stories told throughout mythology throughout time. Up until now, and so it's always, I think, the perfect topic.
The first movie that doesn't come to mind, but when you look historically back, you and I talked last year about a silent film from 1925 called Haxan that delved into witchcraft and devil worship and satanic cults. And as a silent film, it actually had some very progressive and groundbreaking imagery, and it was really a shocking film for 1925, and was banned in a lot of places for a lot of years. But I actually did watch that last year, and that kind of sets the table for some of the more modern films to follow.
Yeah, that movie isn't exactly scary, but it has, from an artistic standpoint, is very visual. A lot of like shockingly like visual scenes that it has in it. Like you wouldn't have seen any of that stuff back in the 1920s, 30s. Like they were really pushing the envelope with a lot of the imagery.
Yeah, you could argue that you didn't see imagery as strong and upsetting until the 70s.
Right.
Really. So I really consider it groundbreaking. But in this category, we're going to start with what was probably the fundamental iconic movie in this category, Rosemary's Baby from 1968, directed by Roman Polanski. And for the purpose of this podcast, we're going to separate the art from the man and not delve into, whether or not Polanski should be allowed to continue to make movies or not. But
right.
This is actually the last movie he made before the unfortunate death of his wife Sharon Tate. So it's almost, I don't want to call it karmic, but it's almost ironic in the fact that he's delving into these cults and these evil things, and then an evil cult impacts his life so greatly.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what he was really into. You even have the one scene in Rosemary's Baby when they're having the party, and you kind of have all these swinger LA characters there, these Hollywood types and stuff like that. And yeah, there's a lot of witchcraft and witchcraft books in this movie, so it does make you wonder like what he was involved with. Who knows?
Yeah. The movie starts with our main characters, Guy and Rosemary, are looking for an apartment in an old New York City building. They find a large secretary-style dresser blocking a closet, which they find very odd. But they love the place. They paint it, they fix it up, and it's now home.
It's like their forever home, right?
Yeah, for as transient as New York City can be. And Guy is an actor who's done some commercials and a couple small stage productions, but is trying to find his way. Rosemary meets Terry in the basement. She's a young lady who was on the streets and had a drug problem and is now living with the Castavetes, an older couple in the building, and she speaks very highly of them. Shows her a necklace that they gave her. It had a token at the end of it, and they've rescued me. They saved me. She's wearing this charm, and that night in bed, Rosemary hears some odd chanting from neighbor's apartment.
And that charm that she's wearing has some kind of like root in it that smells. And Stephen King later uses a very similar thing in Needful Things, his book. And I know that was turned into a movie in like 92 or something like that, but it was a flop. But in the book, he uses a very similar thing. It was
Tannis root, I believe.
Tannis root. Yeah, Tannis root's not real. I actually I had to look it up. It's actually, they just made this up for the movie.
Yeah, which was cool because it makes you like wonder, hey, is this a thing?
Yeah, yeah. It's Eye of Newt, right? For all intents and purposes.
Right, yeah. The next day, they come home, Guy and Rosemary, and the cops are all around, and Terry is dead in the street, appearing to have jumped from the 7th story, which doesn't, the day before she was upbeat. She's like, well, we'll do laundry together. We'll become friends. Nothing jives with this girl jumping off the 7th floor.
And it's a very good part of the movie because you don't expect it to happen for them to kill off a character that quick. Like they introduce like, oh, she's going to be this bubbly new friend. She'll be the friend that's with her throughout this journey. And it's like the next scene, it's like, nope.
Yeah, she's gone. So her and Guy end up meeting the Castavets and get a dinner invite. And they're a little hesitant at first. Like, we don't want this to become a thing. And, they're older. I don't want nosy neighbors. That kind of wall is up. They have a nice dinner. It's full of stories, and Guy seems to actually enjoy the banter more than Rosemary does, and he even agrees to go back the next day and hear some more stories.
And I think Rosemary at this point doesn't want him to. She's like, "Can we just have nights to ourselves? Can you promise not to do this again?" And he's like, "Sure," and then just continues to keep he's like kind of like mesmerized by them.
Yeah, he is for sure, and we find out why more as we go on. The next day, Mrs. Castavet shows up at the apartment with a friend of hers, and they come in and they sit down and they start doing knitting, and it's exactly what Rosemary didn't want. It's intrusive, it's invasive, but they give Rosemary a gift, and it's the same pendant that Terry had with the same Tannis root stink in it, and they say, "Oh, it's great for you, and you'll get used to the smell."
Yeah.
We find out that Guy gets a big acting part in a show because the person who was up for the lead is suddenly stricken blind. It's like
out of nowhere.
Yeah. Wow, what a strange twist. So he's very happy. He wants to celebrate their success by having a baby. And for their celebratory dinner, Mrs. Castavet makes them personalized mousse dishes for dessert, special dessert, and Rosemary says it has a really funny taste. And he's like, "Oh, you're ungrateful." A lot of gaslighting goes on in this movie. And
I was just going to say, this is the tone for the whole movie right here. I was just going to say that, yeah.
Guy does not support his wife. He more and more turns on her and cares about everybody else's feelings but her, and it becomes a major manipulation. And she actually fights strong, and you think about how much women's liberation has come since the 60s. She's actually a very powerful, independent figure through this movie.
Well, I watched this movie with my girlfriend. She had never seen it before. We actually watched this back in for Halloween. We were going to watch classic movies, and I was, have you ever seen Rosemary's Baby? She's like, I haven't. I was like, oh my God, you have to watch this movie. It's a classic. And so we're watching this movie, and the whole time she's like, I love her. Like, she's my favorite character in this. Like, she's awesome. She was like laughing at all her lines and stuff. So yeah.
So Rosemary, after their dinner and after her tainted mousse, she starts to get dizzy. She's wobbly. She passes out.
Almost like she's drugged. Yeah.
And this is one of the famous scenes of the movie. And it's very surreal. It's very trippy, dreamlike. She has a dream, or we believe it's a dream, where she's tied up naked. She's surrounded by all these neighbors, including ones she don't know. They're naked. She gets.
It's like
painted.
On a ship, and there's like down on the ship. There's like a bed, and she goes down there. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a weird dream. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very hallucinatory and very, like almost drug fueled, like a bad acid trip or something. She gets painted with blood, and then we see her body caressed by the hands of a demon. And that's all we see is the hands. And then we see the demon mounts her, and we still just see the hands. And it's just a really freaky scene.
Yeah, it's really uncomfortable for not showing anything, but they imply what's going to happen. They do a very good job with the camera direction.
a lost art that now that movies show everything,
Yeah.
the not showing at times makes it creepier. And I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's the case here.
I agree. And coming from like your Last House on the Left and stuff like that, it's like, from this is a 4-year difference, from this movie to Last House on the Left, but like the same impact.
Yeah. She wakes up in the morning and she's got awful scratches on her body. And Guy, as his charming self, claims that he didn't want to waste baby making night.
Yeah, just this uncomfortable scene right here.
Yeah. So, he took advantage of her while she was passed out and realized his nails had got a little long, and he's trimmed them now.
And he's kind of acting like, yeah, that was me. I did that. And she's kind of like, wait a second, you did that while I was sleeping? Like, she's implying like, I had a dream that I was raped last night. That was you. Like, what's going on? You couldn't wait until I was feeling better. And he was like, listen, honey, I was kind of loaded too. Like, and then kind of puts it on her a little bit. Like, you know what I mean? Like the whole thing is just like, oh no. Like,
yeah. If you had doubts, because there are some sweet scenes between them. But if you had doubts right here, you're like, okay,
right
guy's
then,
a bastard.
Yeah, right then. Yeah.
Yep. So she goes to the doctor, and her doctor, Dr. Hill, tells her that she is pregnant, and she's happy. Guy is ecstatic, and he tells the Castevets, their new neighbors, he's got to tell them everything. And they come over to congratulate her, and it's a big celebratory. There's hugs, and she doesn't seem to mind their imposing at this time, but they congratulate her and they offer her. They're good friends with Dr. Saperstein, who is the best OBGYN in New York City and one of the best in the country, and we're going to have him take care of you.
Yeah, and other people are like, when they find out that that's the doctor, like, oh yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah, he's great. He's one of the best.
Yeah.
She likes Dr. Hill, but she reluctantly switches, and we see.
I don't even think she has a choice. I think Minnie goes in the other room and just makes the phone call right then before they even she just asserts it. Yeah.
Yeah, these people are at least now
Snoopy.
We see Guy and everyone else trying to control her very much. She's having great pains. Awful pains in her stomach, and she's losing weight. She becomes she's thin to begin with. She becomes very thin.
Yes. She says, "Oh, I've only lost a couple pounds." And her friend, I think he's like the therapist, something like that, and he's like, "You've lost more than a couple pounds. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah,
this is
their friend Hutch, who was their landlord at the first place, and advised them against moving there. He had heard some things about this building. But yeah, she everyone keeps saying, "Oh, you'll pack it all on at the end." Probably too much.
Yeah. They're all trying to, again, more gaslighting. They're just telling her, you're fine. Yeah.
She gets a shorter haircut, and all Guy can tell her is how terrible it looks.
Yeah, he's like, you didn't pay for that, did you?
Like, that's awful.
It's like, oh, dude, let me pull you aside. Let me tell you what you don't say.
Yeah, and he's like, that's so ugly. He's like, you think I'm? He's like, no, you're not ugly. That haircut's ugly.
Yeah,
like he's like relentless with it.
He's fumbling the ball every scene.
Yeah, and the doctor had ordered her to Mrs. Castevet's going to make you an herb drink every day, fresh from her herb garden, way better than vitamins you're going to get out on the market.
He says, don't read any books, don't listen to anyone, don't consult anyone else, don't take any vitamins. You're only going to take the stuff I give. Yeah, they're controlling this entire scenario.
Yep. She's having odd urges where she's eating at first undercooked and then raw meat. There's a cool scene where she's cooking a steak and she literally sets it in the pan, picks it up, sets it in the pan, and then sets it on her plate. It is extra, extra rare.
Extra rare, yeah, it's bloody.
Yeah, you could have taken a bite out of that thing in the field and been
steak tartare. Yeah.
Yeah. So her friend Hutch comes and visits her, and he's like, something's not right. You don't look good. And then he calls her later and says that he wants to meet the next day and talk. He's got something he wants to tell her, but not over the phone. And Guy is very suspicious of this, and he goes off. And, he figure he's doing something evil. So Hutch doesn't show up to the meeting the next day. She can't track him down. He's not there. She finally finds out he's in a coma. And she's starting to get upset at all the controlling aspects of her life. She tells Guy she's having a party for the holidays, and she's inviting all their old friends, nobody from the building, nobody over 60. And she tells Guy, I'm going back to my own doctor. I'm not drinking the herb drinks anymore, and then I want nothing to do with the Castevets. I want them out of my life. And when they're having this fight, and he's like, oh, you're going to upset Dr. Saperstein. That's how does that feel about his feelings? Making all these excuses, at no point ever caring about her feelings.
Yeah, it's weird. He's starting to take everyone else's side but hers. Yeah. So it's almost like he's under some kind of spell, right?
Yeah. While they're fighting, the baby kicks. And that's like what she's been waiting for. And it kind of triggers her to relent on all the things she was saying. And okay, I guess everything is okay. Maybe I'm overreacting. And she's happy again, and she kind of goes back to the same routine. She finds out a while later that Hutch dies. He never recovered from his coma, and he passes away. At his funeral, which I found it very odd that Guy did not attend, because they were, at the beginning, all three are sitting together as friends.
That's a good observation. I didn't think of that.
But he asked her, hey, how was the funeral?
That's right. Yeah.
But at the funeral, Hutch's caregiver gives Rosemary a book that she said Hutch was adamant that you need to have this. And it's a book about witchcraft and Satanism, and it implicates her neighbors as part of it. And they have used their prior name as an anagram and changed their names. And she tells Guy, of course, she tells her husband, and he puts the book away. He ultimately ends up throwing the book out without her permission. And Minnie and Roman, the Castevets, supposedly go out of town. They're going to remove themselves from the situation. They're traveling. They're going to visit some friends and family. So they're gone, supposedly. Rosemary visits Dr. Saperstein, and through conversations with the secretary, who's saying, oh, what is that thing around here? What is that smell? And she's like, oh, yeah, it's this root. And she's like, oh, Dr. Saperstein has the same smell in his office. And she realizes he's part of it.
Yeah, and she kind of just gets up and starts having this freak out moment. Yeah.
She goes to a payphone, again, 1968, very few options. She calls Dr. Hill and begs him to see her. And she finally gets an audience with him, gets into his office, and she tells him everything that she's learned, the book, the witchcraft, the Satanism, the change in their name. Dr. Saperstein's in on it. And
yeah, she's like, there's a plot against me. I'm not crazy. And he's like, okay, I'll listen. Yeah.
And he appears sympathetic, helpful, brings her in a room to lie down. And when she wakes up, Dr. Saperstein and Guy are there, and they've shown up to take her home because he called them. And they threaten her with putting her in an insane asylum if she continues with this crazy talk.
It's funny actually. When she was at the previous, I forgot to mention this. When she was at the previous Saperstein, when she was at his office, she's reading a Time magazine, and on Time magazine it says, "Is God dead?" And so you have, and throughout the movie, like the Pope keeps emerging on TV and stuff like that, and like they kind of keep having these symbolic, a lot of this symbolism.
So they take her home, and as they get back to the apartment complex, she creates a diversion, and she escapes into the elevator alone. She shuts them out of the elevator and gets herself up to her apartment, and she locks herself in. But we find out that the neighbors are already inside, sneaking around, and they unlock the door, and she ends up surrounded by a large group of neighbors and Guy and Dr. Saperstein, who sedates her. She comes to, and Guy tells her it was a boy and that everything is okay. And she comes to later, and Dr. Saperstein is there telling her the baby died. Didn't make it. And she starts to freak, and he sedates her again. And then she kind of settles into a daily care routine. There's a nurse taking care of her. She notices that the nurse keeps taking her milk, and instead of disposing it, takes it. And she starts to become suspicious, as of course we, the viewer, are. She hides her meds. She stops taking her meds that they're giving
She
her.
hides
every
them on
day.
the bed. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought of Misery. I thought of James Caan hiding his
Putting it in the mattress. Yeah.
hiding his pills in the mattress. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's where you got that idea from.
Yeah, you got that, and then the pendant thing, right? Yeah, he was just very heavily influenced on Stephen King was influenced by his movie for sure.
That night, she hears a baby crying, and she asks Guy about it, and he says, "Oh, some new neighbors moved in, and they have a child." And we're like, "Yeah, none of this adds up." You know, we're the viewer. There, nothing is laid out for you, but it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, that's actually the intelligence of this movie. I like how it's done.
That night, since she's not sedated, she's not taking her medicine, she sneaks from her bed, she grabs a butcher knife, and we find out how the people got into her apartment. That hidden closet is a passageway to the Castavet's house. And when she visited there the first time, she noted when they got back, all the pictures were off the wall. You see the spots on the wall where the picture was hanging? There's discoloration, but they took all their pictures down. And Guy said, maybe they're just private people. They don't want their family shown or whatever. Well, now that she's back in there as a sneak-in guest, we see their walls are decorated with satanic pictures and with pictures of the devil and satanic rites and those kinds of things. And she goes in, and it's a room full of people, and it looks like a party. It looks like a celebration, and there is a black crib shrouded in black lace with an upside down cross hanging over it, and the baby's crying. And she approaches the baby, and they let her. And she
Roman's kind of like, let her do this, like let her.
Yeah. And Roman, as we find out, is the person with the history. This is his family. He's really the leader of this coven.
And they kind of in the beginning, when they first meet him, they kind of like allude to that because he keeps talking about he's been everywhere in the world, right? So he's almost this like satanic figure. He's like, I've been everywhere, right? And they're kind of foreshadowing that, and he starts talking about all these places, and Minnie's like hushes him, like enough, let's talk about something else.
He's like, name anywhere, name it. I've been there.
I've been there. Yeah.
It's almost it's almost like, comic at that point.
It is, yeah.
As she approaches the crib, she looks down, and this is, to my opinion, this was the best part of the movie.
Yeah.
She says, "What's wrong with his eyes?" And then some random coven member walks by and says, "Oh, he has his father's eyes. Hail Satan!" And they all begin to chant. And Guy, and she kind of like staggers back and sits down, and Guy comes over to her and explains all their newfound success, his parts, the money, is all tied into this, and it's worth it, and they can have other children, and it was a good move to do this.
And she had suspected that earlier when she talked to Dr. Hill. She was like, this is all part of their thing because I read these books. And
Yep. And she spits on him. And there's a nurse rocking the cradle, and the baby's crying. And Rosemary gets up and slowly approaches and says, "You're doing it wrong. You're rocking him too hard. Let me do it." And the nurse gets upset, and Roman says, "No, let her do it." And he actually offers her, "Rosemary, you should raise your child. You don't need to join our coven to be a good mother." And we see kind of a blank look on her face, and the baby's crying, and she reaches and grabs and starts rocking the cradle.
Yeah.
And it's when I first saw it, I was mad at the ending. And as I've digested it more, I think it's the right ending.
Yes,
because
it's dark. Yeah,
the good guys don't always win. Bad things happen. And
she's like, listen, all right, I have a chance to at least raise my child. Maybe I can put my values into it, right? And maybe I can change the scenario, right? Like, who knows? It's like there's a lot. It's a very dense ending. There's a lot of interpretation.
The first time I saw it, I remember I'm clearly predicting she's going to grab that upside down cross, and she's gonna kill that kid. That was my
like herself, or try to kill someone else. Like she just immediately gives right in,
because they're saying this is, and there was a clue earlier on when they were talking about it was New Year's, and they said they also, one of the guys says it's 1965, and he also called it year one.
Year one, yeah.
And I'm like, what does that mean to anyone other than somebody in on
The
this.
people that know what's going to happen, right? It's year one. Yeah.
So you're thinking if this is the son of Satan and he's going to be like the Jesus equivalent on earth and create all this chaos and terror and hell on earth. I think you got to bury the you got to bury the cross into his chest and end it.
Yeah, but she doesn't know that, right? I mean, and this is kind of, I mean, I think what's interesting about this movie is that it's basically the reverse of like the manger with Jesus, right? It's that whole story, but like let's reverse it. And it's all about Satan. That's the same story, right? And like all the wise men are there to give gifts,
Yeah.
and she has to willingly choose to give birth to the child. And like Roman's like, no, you can willingly be the mother, right? Like it's the same story. They just reversed it for Satan, and I think that's the genius behind it.
Yeah, no, and I again, as I've considered it further, it is the perfect ending, even though I wanted something different. But
I like how it fits because it's just the reverse story, and she has to willingly go along with it. Like you don't, like you said, it's like you don't have to join a covenant, just raise the kid. And she's like, okay, because either way, you're getting sucked into that world. You know what I mean? Like you're getting,
and we're not mothers, we never will be.
Right.
That maternal instinct is strong.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that, again, it deserves its place as a classic. Ruth
It's an
Gordon,
absolute classic. Yeah, like I said,
Academy
I watched
Award for her portrayal as Minnie. Mia Farrow was nominated for an Academy Award, but did not win. And I think, she's been in a lot of movies. This is her iconic role. She hasn't been anything. She wasn't in anything with the impact that this film had, and she was fantastic in it.
Yeah, this is a well-written movie, great dialogue, the structure of it, the way it's shot. This movie to me is just an absolute classic. And like I said, I watched it with my girlfriend. She saw it for the first time. She doesn't even like horror, and that was a good movie. I was like, yeah.
I've never read the Ira Levin novel it was based on, but everything I've read says the movie exceeds the novel tenfold.
Wow,
it's so much better.
That's rare.
The novel's kind of cheesy and hokey, and the movie is never those things.
Yeah, it takes all those elements of film that you can't get with a book. I mean, both mediums offer two different things, but it's sometimes the book just kind of lends itself better because of the description that it can offer.
Yeah,
and then other times, you have a movie like this where it's like the cinematic effects kind of help portray what's going on with the story so well.
Yeah. Okay, our second film on Satanic Panic is House of the Devil from 2009, directed by Ty West. And this is a movie I had seen before, but not in a long time, and was very happy to check out again. Had you seen this before? What's your thoughts on this
No,
movie?
I had never seen this movie. I had heard of it. It was on my radar, and I thought this would be a great opportunity to watch it. And I was actually really shocked. I did not expect this movie to be what this movie was.
Good. Well, it starts with a college student, Samantha. She rents a new apartment that she really can't afford. She's kind of a broke college student, but the apartment's a great deal. She rents it from horror icon Dee Wallace, who has a 30-second part in the movie.
Yeah.
But it's cool to see her in there.
Now, this movie takes place in the 80s, right?
1983 is the timeline. Yes.
Yeah. Because they have like Walkmans and payphones and stuff like that. And also the movie itself, which I thought was actually really cool, has an 80s like directorial style vibe to it. Like the whole movie.
Well, that is very true. They used the same type of camera and film that was used in the 80s. They used many of the same horror standard shots and camera shots that were done in the 80s.
Yeah, that faraway shot where you see her walking and then playing the music. I was like, oh, this feels like such an 80s movie. I liked it.
It was designed to be, this is made in 2009, but it takes place in 1983, and we want it to look like it was filmed in 1983.
And a lot of the house shots feel like Black Christmas, has that Black Christmas feel to it. Yeah.
She answers a babysitter needed flyer because she needs the money and she has to pay for her apartment on Monday. And the guy doesn't show up for a meeting, but her friend takes down all of the flyers, so they have no one else to call. They end up calling her back and offering $100 for a few hours. Her friend Megan, who's the one who took down the all the flyers, gives her a ride because this house is out in the middle of nowhere, and offers to stay with her. And her friend is played by Greta Gerwig, who blew everything out of the water this year as the director of Barbie.
Yeah, oh, that's right. That's right. I didn't put that together. That's right. Wow.
I saw the name and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And she's actually really, really good in the few scenes they have together.
Yeah.
We hear on the news, we just talked about Last House on the Left, how we get all the facts about the people escaping prison on the news report and the radio.
Mm-hmm.
We also find out on the radio that there's a massive eclipse happening that night, and that everyone's been primed up for it.
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal in the background.
Yep. They arrive at this big house, huge house, and a very weird older man meets them.
Mr. Ullman.
Mr. Ullman. He is odd as can be and perfect for the role. And he reveals some things. First, he says, I'm only paying for one. And Samantha's like, no, Megan was my ride. She's leaving. She's just coming to pick me up later.
And he's like a tall, soft spoken, like unassuming creepy, right? Like it's weird. Like it's like there's something off, but he's like, hello, Samantha, like very soft spoken. And yeah, it kind of comes off that kind of creepy.
He's got like long in the back, white wispy hair. He reminds me of Angus Scrimm, the tall man from the Phantasm series.
Yes.
He's got that kind of vibe.
Great. Yes, that's perfect.
Then he tells her, look, we're having a hard time getting anybody. There is no child. And she's like, what? And it's like, it's just my wife's mother. And she's like, well, I'm not a caregiver. I'm not trained for that. He's like, you won't even see her. It's just in case of emergency. Just watch TV.
We just need someone here. Yeah, order a pizza. Happens. Yeah, order a pizza, sit down. Yeah.
Yeah, he mentioned several times about ordering pizza. They end up negotiating the rate up to $400. She needs $300 for the apartment on Monday, so she's doing it. Yep. Megan tells her she's being stupid. She says, hey, I need the money. And Megan's going to come back at 12:30 to pick her up.
Yeah, and Megan has a good line. She's like, some things are too good to be true. Like, why? What's the catch here? Right. Yeah. And she's like, relax. I need this money.
But Megan's also rich, as it comes from a wealthy family. Samantha is struggling. So yeah. It's kind of apples and oranges. And I can understand both perspectives. As she's leaving, she pulls over by a cemetery and she's trying to light a cigarette, and a man approaches and he lights her cigarette for her. And he says, oh, wait, you're not the babysitter? And she's like, no. And then he just blows her head clean off.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like a Tom Savini maniac blast in the car.
I thought it was a great scene. It wasn't one of those flash away scenes. They show it. Yeah,
and it was so quick. It caught you off guard.
Yeah, he's real assuming too. Like, oh, you're not the thing. Pulls it out, bang, just gets her. I was like, whoa.
I was just
kind of changed the tone of the movie right there.
Absolutely did, and it's just a splatter all through the car, and it was handled so well because it was shocking. It happens so fast. I love how they transitioned.
Yeah, he's real unassuming. Like, hey, it's kind of chilly out here, and he's just I did not see that coming at all. And then he's real cold hearted after. He's leaning in the window after he shoots, or he's smoking a cigarette. Yeah, like, oh, this guy's a real killer.
Yeah, the wife emerges from the basement, oddly enough, and meets Samantha, and she is every bit as odd as the husband. They are, they could be part of the Addams family.
I was going to say Morticia. Yeah. They come down. They're very weird.
Yeah. Super creepy. And they go ahead and leave. And they here's an emergency number if you need us. Here's money for pizza. Don't forget the pizza. He repeated
bringing that up. And it's funny, earlier in the movie when Megan and Sam, it's like the second scene of the movie when they're having second or third scene, they're having pizza together. Megan puts the pizza down. She's like, this pizza is disgusting today. Like, and I think they order from that same shop. So there's kind of this thing going on with pizza and eclipses.
She calls Megan to make sure she got home. No answer. She orders the pizza. And this is the part of the movie that was a little off for me. She's very nosy. She's going through the house. She's looking into stuff. At one point, she's got her Walkman on, and she's dancing around to music. She goes upstairs, she's dancing in the hallway, and she knocks over a vase. Like, these people are weird. You're already in an uncomfortable situation. Samantha warned you this is an odd situation. You sit your ass down. You turn on the TV, whatever's on in 1983.
Right. Face the doors, and so you know what's coming.
Her behavior struck me as not normal.
Yeah,
particularly the nosy part. You're not opening doors and looking around at stuff in their house.
I had to rewind some of these scenes because I kept thinking, I was like, did she hear something and I didn't hear it? Like, why is she being so intrusive? Yeah, for some reason she just starts creeping around. But I figured for the benefit of the doubt, I figured maybe she wants to know, like, where's the mother upstairs? Like, what's going on? Should I go up there and check? Like, maybe she's like, maybe I should go check and see where this mom is, like, see what's going on. I don't know. It's never said. It's just, I was trying to give a benefit of the doubt for the story.
Yeah. And of course, on the TV, when she does turn the TV on, Night of the Living Dead is on.
Yeah.
As we've talked about before, every movie shows Night of the Living Dead on TV because it's in public domain. You can use it without any permission.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. To show something else, you got to get, the copyright permission. So yeah, if you want to make a movie, show Night of the Living Dead on the TV. You don't have to pay anybody.
You're fine. Yeah.
She hears a loud thud upstairs. There had been some rustling upstairs, and hey, the mom's up there. She says she can take care of herself. It's not unusual to hear noises up there, but now she hears a loud thud. So she takes a knife from the kitchen and she slowly goes up to the stairs to investigate. And I don't know if you caught this. There's a slow, shadowy ascension of the stairs, very reminiscent of the famous Nosferatu scene.
You know what? I didn't make that connection, but I mean, I felt like it was definitely coming, like that was an influence from something. I just couldn't put I couldn't like put the nail on it, but that's what it was. Yeah. I was like, man, what's this from? Like, it felt like it was like they were paying homage to a scene, and I couldn't nail it, but yeah.
That's what I drew from, and it's been done before. Other movies.
It just felt like it, like it was like a trope type thing. I was like, all right,
she's got the knife instead of his long fingers, and it's but it's all casted in shadow as she comes up the stairs.
That's very cool.
I thought that's very cool. Yeah.
Yep.
She goes up to a closed door, and behind the door, we see bodies laid out on a pentagram in blood, but she doesn't see them. There's another level, and she starts to ascend that final level, and the doorbell rings. It's the pizza delivery. And we see the pizzas delivered by the same man who shot Megan. And we know, there's something foul in the air. So Samantha calls the emergency number that Mr. Ullman left for her and gets an invalid number, but weirdly gets an immediate call back from someone identifying as emergency services. And she says, no, everything's okay. There's no emergency. Everything's okay. Everything's fine. She then starts eating the pizza. And much like the moose in Rosemary's Baby, it tastes funny. She starts looking around. She finds a bathtub full of large clumps of hair, which for some reason I find hair very disturbing. So I thought that was very gross.
Yeah, it is.
She goes back up to the top level, to the third floor. And when she tries to turn the light on, there's a pop and the power in the entire house goes off. She tries to feel her way back down the stairs, but she's drowsy from whatever was in the pizza, and she passes out. She wakes up much like our Rosemary. She wakes up tied to a pentagram. She's wearing a white dress, and the whole family is there in robes. We learn that the pizza delivery guy, the cemetery shooter, is their son. And we also meet the grandma. The family's all in robes, and then the grandma come out. And she is, I don't know how you would describe her. She is mutated.
Like a witch, like something from The Witch. Yeah.
I wrote that she looks like the witch in Snow White crossed with a bad potato. That's the description. That's the best I could come up with.
That's actually the perfect description. When you say those two things, I think of her in this movie.
She's just hideous, sucked in lips, and just a really weird looking, creepy character.
black teeth and
Yeah, the old woman draws a pentagram on Samantha's stomach in blood,
blood. Yeah.
and then she gets a goat skull that's hollowed out, and she slits her own wrists and pours the blood through the goat skull into Samantha's mouth, which is just so nasty.
Yeah, she's gargling it, and they're kind of like water torturing her. She has like a gag in her mouth, but like it's kind of like dripping in there, and it's just really disturbing.
She through the chaos of the blood ceremony, she manages to get herself free, and she runs. And the son tries to stop her, and she sticks her thumb right into his eye, just pops his eye with her thumb.
Yeah, we can't go a movie without that.
Yeah. As soon as every time I see it, I'm like, oh, there you go, Matt. Perfect.
Every movie I watch.
As she starts to run free, Megan's body is at the top of the steps, and head just completely obliterated. As she tries to get away, the son shoots her in the shoulder, and now he's missing one eye, and she's been shot in the shoulder, and they start to tussle, but she slits his throat. And the mother is now chasing her, and she gets the knife and she sticks it in the mother's back, basically eliminating the mother. She's lying on the ground, rolling around, trying to reach a knife
and
she can't reach.
She's looking out the window saying, "Talk to me, Lord. Talk to me, Lord." And then right as that happens, Sam just goes right in the back.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, it was cool. I was like, yeah.
She grabs the gun that the son Victor had, and she takes it on her way out. And she's starting to hallucinate. She's seeing images of the grandmother. She's haunted. She's hearing voices.
It's almost like you're getting like 0.25 second flashes of like the face of the mother, kind of like Exorcist style,
like the Pazuzu subliminal image. Yeah.
They're kind of just like throwing it up on the screen.
Voices. She's a little bit disoriented. She's struggling to maintain herself. She's covered in blood, and the father's chasing her. And they stop in the cemetery, and they have a confrontation. And the father, in his creepy way he's been since we met him, he says the eclipse is upon us. It's too late. It will happen any minute now. And she raises the gun, but instead of pointing it at the father, she shoots herself in the head. And the father screams, "No!"
Yeah.
And you think crisis averted. You think, what was going to happen in Rosemary's Baby, she prevented.
Yeah.
Then you hear a news report that the eclipse ended way faster than expected.
It's scientifically impossible. They're trying to figure out like how the Earth escaped it. Like it's not even physically possible. Like it's baffling everyone. It's on the news.
The implication that the eclipse was a product of Satan, and once this happened, the whole thing was dismantled.
Yeah, it ended. Yep.
Scientists can't explain it, like you said. Yeah. And then we cut to the hospital, and the surprise to me when I first saw the surprise ending, Samantha's in the hospital on life support. And the nurse comes by and she checks her, and then as she's leaving, she says, "Don't worry, you're going to be just fine." Then she pats her stomach and says, "Both of you," implying a pregnancy.
Yeah. And then the credits kind of roll right there.
And that's it. And I'm still not sure how I feel about the end. Like, we saw what that gun did to Megan's head.
Yeah.
I had a hard time believing that she's going to be okay.
Yeah, which makes you wonder. I mean, like, was it some kind of satanic force that's keeping her alive, right? Like some kind of like demon is living within her right now. So like, it's just going to keep her alive and reconstruct what it has to prevent it from dying. Yeah, I don't know. You have to take that part with a grain of salt, I guess.
Yeah. Overall, a very good movie, a very cool homage to a lot of historical horror films. Ty West has made some really, really good movies.
He did Pearl and X, didn't he?
Yeah. And Maxine,
which are also throwbacks, right, to like old school. Yeah.
He very much takes let me honor this era of horror with a new twist.
Ty West is definitely a student of film, and when you watch this movie, this movie is a film. It's very well done. It's not the most exciting movie. It's not a movie that's for everyone. That's for sure. I wouldn't recommend this to everyone, but I still think it's a quality film. I think he did a great job of doing what he was trying to do.
It's a stylistic throwback
Yeah,
that takes its time to get to the horror, and that's how movies used to be. I read a review online, and the reviewer said, an awesome 20-minute movie with 70 minutes of filler. And I disagree with that.
I agree. I disagree too.
I think there is sometimes value in building the characters and building the scenarios and then having it all, crash in a climactic ending. I think this is a very, very good movie. I do debate the ending. I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Yeah, I agree with the ending part. Like you assume she's dead. I mean, it's a clear shot. I mean, you know what I mean? But for whatever some kind of force is keeping her alive, that's kind of how I interpreted it. But
the same gun shot her friend.
Flew her. Oh, not only that, but when she's climbing out of like the pentagram like attic area, when she comes downstairs and she trips over Megan's dead body, and Megan's dead body looks like a wet mop that was just obliterated. Yeah. It looks like a wet mop, of just blood. Like it's smothered her face.
Her head was like a Gallagher watermelon.
Yes, yeah.
And somehow Megan and somehow
Price
Samantha survived with the same gun. I struggle with that a little bit. There's also I noticed this. They say that the mother upstairs is his wife's mother, but at one point she yells upstairs and calls Mrs. Ullman, which would not be her name if it was the wife's mother.
Yeah, exactly. Unless it was like mother-in-law. Who knows? Maybe there's another demonic hierarchy that's going on. Like she's a mother, but like in like a religious sense, like because they're all like demon worshippers, right? So like she's the mother.
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah, something.
I just thought that was a script error.
Yeah. But other than that, it is a good film. I agree. And like you said, like building up the tension. One thing this movie does is it doesn't play down the intelligence of the audience. It kind of lets you like kind of just figure things out. It never tells you, like it never like narrates and tells you what's going on. You kind of have to piece it together. And it's not overly complicated, but that's what's nice about it.
Yeah. One thing that struck me as we went through the films this week, typically when we pick a category, we have like differing films. We have like, maybe like an extreme splatter fest, and then we try to go to opposite ends of the spectrum a little bit, even within the same category. These movies are very much cut from the same cloth.
And actually, I found that very uncanny. I enjoyed that because I knew nothing about this movie, and this was my pick. I was like, I don't know anything about this movie. I had no idea how closely related it was to Rosemary's Baby. I actually found that kind of cool to like discover that as I was watching it.
It's very much influenced by it. I would say the Ullmans are at the very least pen pals with the Castavets.
Yeah,
they would get along wonderfully.
Maybe it takes place in the same universe, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It definitely pays homage to Rosemary's Baby, but it does it in its own way. A little bit of a modern retelling, but
yeah, and it was nice. And I like I said, I really like that 80s style that they went for. Even using that music, they kept the theme consistent the whole movie. Some movies like the music can be really inconsistent. Going back to last week with Last House on the Left, just inconsistent music usage. But with this one, I thought they did a really good job.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the subject, Satanic Panic, the movies are similar in vein. Both good movies. One's an all-time classic. One's a pretty cool modern
homage to classics. Yeah.
But, it's a category that is really ripe for horror because, as you mentioned, you're talking about the personification of all evil. You can't get much more horrific than that. So it's a good category.
And there's a ton of movies we'll have to revisit this topic.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, that's our topic this week. That's our show, Satanic Panic. We are the Weekly Horoscope. I'm Jerry. That's Matt. And we will see you next time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, everyone.
Your Weekly Horoscope with Jerry and Matt.